James Bartholomew Olsen is a fictional character appearing in American comic books published by DC Comics. Olsen is a young photojournalist working for the Daily Planet. He is close friends with Lois Lane and Superman, and has a good working relationship with his boss Perry White. Olsen looks up to his co-workers as role models and parent figures. In the Silver Age, he appeared in the comic book series Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen. The character has appeared in most other media adaptations of Superman. He was portrayed by Tommy Bond in the two Superman film serials, Superman, 1948, and Atom Man vs. Superman, 1950. Jack Larson played the character on the Adventures of Superman television show. Marc McClure in the Superman films of the 1970s and 1980s, as well as the 1984 film Supergirl. Michael Lands in the first season of Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman, and Justin Whalin in the subsequent 3 seasons. Sam Huntington in the 2006 film Superman Returns, Aaron Ashmore in the CW's Smallville, and Michael Cassidy in the 2016 film Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice. In the series Supergirl, he was portrayed by Mehcad Brooks. An unnamed office boy with a bow tie makes a brief appearance in the story Superman's Phony Manager, published in Action Comics number 6, November 1938, which is claimed to be Jimmy Olsen's first appearance by several reference sources. The character was first introduced as Jimmy Olsen in the radio show The Adventures of Superman on April 15, 1940 in the episode Donnie's Protection Racket, mainly so the Man of Steel would have someone to talk to. With Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster creating and drawing the physical appearance and giving him a bigger personality, the character moved from the radio show back into the comics in 1941, first appearing as a named character in the story Superman vs. the Archer in Superman number 13, November to December 1941. But after a handful of appearances, he disappeared again. In late 1953, while Jack Larson was playing the character on the Adventures of Superman television show where he was referred to as Jim Olsen, the character was revived in the Superman comics after a 10-year absence and then given his own title. Jimmy is traditionally depicted as a bow-tie-wearing, red-haired young man who works as a cub reporter and photographer for the Daily Planet, alongside Lois Lane and Clark Kent, whom he idolizes as career role models. In most depictions of the character, he has a strong friendship with Superman. As Superman's friend, Jimmy has special access to the Man of Steel, thanks to Superman's gift to Jimmy of a signal watch, a wristwatch which, with the press of a button, emits a special ultrasonic frequency signal that Superman can hear anywhere on Earth. In post-crisis continuity, Jimmy invented the watch himself, and Superman briefly considered confiscating it. In New Earth continuity, the watch was designed by Superman based on a larger signaling device Jimmy created. In many Silver Age of comic books, Jimmy was often seen sharing adventures with Superman, who saved him from various predicaments ranging from dangerous to merely embarrassing. Beginning in 1954, Jimmy stars in his own comic book, Superman's Pal Jimmy Olsen, published from 1954 to 1974. Which saw Olsen in a variety of slapstick adventures and strange transformations, with and without Superman. The stories in the title would often feature particularly outlandish situations, ranging from Jimmy being hurled back in time to Krypton before its destruction in issue number 36 to dealing frequently with gorillas of all sorts. This version of Jimmy Olsen even had his own, in-story, fan club. Jack Kirby took over the Jimmy Olsen comic with issue number 134. He began by introducing a secret DNA project to create mutated humans for good, adding the Harrys, a group of technology-equipped hippies, super beings from other planets, proto-new gods, Intergang, and Morgan Edge, and reintroduced his 1940s Newsboy Legion characters. About halfway through his run, Kirby introduced vampires, the Loch Ness Monster, and Victor Volcanum, the fire-eating arch-criminal. Readership quickly dropped back to its pre-Kirby levels. Kirby's tenure on the series ended with issue number 148, and with issue number 164, April to May 1974, Jimmy's book was folded into the anthology titled The Superman Family. In that series, Olsen became a more serious character who battled criminals as an investigative reporter known as Mr. Action in urban crime stories that rarely involved Superman. Jimmy Olsen appeared in news stories in the Superman Family number 164, 167, 170, 173, 176, 179, and 182 to 222. Following Crisis on Infinite Earths, the entire Superman mythos was rebooted from scratch in the limited series The Man of Steel. Despite recent modernization efforts on Superman and his supporting characters, Jimmy Olsen has not been significantly changed in the modern age. He is still a cub reporter working for the Daily Planet, and is still friends with Superman. His look was made over as he stopped wearing bogies, and started wearing casual clothing, though this trend started in 1970s comics. An interesting alteration to the relationship was that Jimmy designed the signal watch himself, leading to his first meeting with Superman. Superman briefly considered confiscating the watch, but decided to trust Jimmy to use it responsibly. While Jimmy's transformations no longer occur as regularly as they did in the Silver Age, Jimmy once became a type of elastic-clad uncontact with the Eradicator. This transformation, however, was extremely painful for Jimmy and has not appeared since. He also took the identity of Turtle Boy in a series of pizza commercials, made when he was temporarily laid off from the planet. In the 1990s, Jimmy quit the planet in a dispute over a story and went to Metropolis broadcaster Galaxy Broadcasting, where he worked as an on-air investigative reporter. This change matured Jimmy somewhat, but he became more ambitious, as well as more brash and arrogant. He still stayed on good terms with both Clark and Lois, to the point where Jimmy was best man at their wedding. This period ended when he believed, wrongly, that he had discovered Superman's secret identity and said he would announce it live on air. He reconsidered his actions, but lost his job for wasting the time slot. He was again rehired by the planet. Jimmy later came under the angry hand of the Alpha Centurion, an alternate universe dictator with a deep-seated hatred for Superman and eyes for Lois Lane. It was Jimmy who first uncovered his secret plot to control the world's finances through his company Alias Industries Incorporated. Olsen is a central character in the 12-part miniseries Superman, Metropolis, beginning June 2003. Written by Chuck Austen and illustrated by Dan Igelzuzaj, the series focuses on the futuristic technology unleashed in Metropolis by Brainiac in a previous storyline and how it affects the everyday lives of Metropolis citizens. Jimmy takes a position as a regular star reporter for the Daily Planet, replacing the recently demoted Clark Kent. This caused a strain at the planet. Jimmy's story in the 2007-08 weekly series Countdown to Final Crisis begins with an investigation into the death of Dual Dent. Tying into the Death of the New Gods storyline, Jimmy starts to develop many superpowers, which he first discovers when he is attacked by Killer Croc while gathering information on Dual's death. As the story progresses, he tries to uncover the origin of these powers and starts to discover their potential limitlessness in stories which mimic the Silver Age Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen adventures. Briefly operating as the superhero Mr. Action, Jimmy is unable to command the respect of established superheroes in the Justice League and Teen Titans. He gives up on this particular avenue. One of these powers allows Jimmy to realize the identities of some superheroes, such as Robin and Superman, who requests that he take care of Krypto. Jimmy is eventually tracked down by the new god Forager, with whom he begins a romantic relationship. Forager informs him that Jimmy has become a soul catcher for the spirits of dying new gods. The Monitor known as Solomon later tells him that his new powers are the consequence of Darkseid using Jimmy as a host for powers he wishes to use to recreate the universe in his image, knowing that Superman's pal is one of the world's most well-protected citizens. Later, as the events of Countdown begin to come to their close, Jimmy becomes a more confidently powerful character and is reunited with the series' other cast members on a mission to stop Karate Kid's disease from becoming a pandemic of apocalyptic proportions. Unfortunately, they fail, and the Mortococcus virus devastates an alternate Earth. Upon return to their Earth, Jimmy is captured by Mary Marvel, who had been manipulated towards evil by Darkseid. When Superman comes to save Jimmy, Darkseid takes control of the powers within him, causing Jimmy to radiate kryptonite radiation, until Ray Palmer manages to rewire Darkseid's control from inside of Jimmy. Jimmy then transforms into a giant turtle-like creature, and prepares to take on Darkseid himself. Darkseid overcomes Jimmy, and prepares to kill him. Ray Palmer then comes out of Jimmy with the new God Soul battery, and destroys it, returning Jimmy to normal. During Superman's fight with Atlas, Jimmy witnesses a mysterious figure hovering over the fight. After some encouraging words from Clark Kent, he decides to take 2 weeks off to investigate. He tracks down a figure connected with the past of Jonathan Drew and is told the story of how Jonathan became codename Assassin. His informant is quickly executed by codename Assassin, who then tries to kill Jimmy. Jimmy is able to avoid being killed and is apparently shielded from codename Assassin's telepathy due to his own many physical transformations over the years. Jimmy goes to Project Cadmus and speaks to Double X, who tells him the story about the death of the original Guardian at the hands of codename Assassin and how cloning is such an imperfect science that the only viable clone alive went into hiding in the desert. Double X then dies from injuries sustained in an earlier conflict with codename Assassin. Jimmy heads south to the town of Warpath, Arizona, managing to avoid conflict with codename Assassin on the way. Upon arriving in Warpath, Jimmy interviews the sheriff, Greg Saunders, who evades his questions. Jimmy follows him after dark and sees Saunders working with the last Guardian clone. He then confronts the clone at his home and the two speak. With his 2 weeks up, Jimmy returns to Metropolis horrified from learning that a faction within the U.S. military is actively plotting to kill Superman. Willing to do anything to uncover the conspiracy behind Project 7734, Jimmy uses an anonymous chat server and gets in contact with Eric, amazing woman from Infinity Incorporated, who claims to have information useful to help Jimmy. Despite being actively pursued by codename Assassin, who goes so far to place bugs in his house, Jimmy goes to the appointment, only to find Eric's house burned to the ground. Jimmy pulls Eric out, who with his dying breath, shifts to his more reliable and powerful Erica form. Eric gives him Natasha Iron's number. Natasha contacts then Jimmy, telling him about the plans of General Sam Lane, his outworldly fortress and his capture, and use of a planet breaker weapon of Captain Atom, now codenamed Project Breach, due to his similarity to Tim Zanetti's fate. Finally ready to uncover the truth, Jimmy is openly confronted by codename Assassin, who until that point had merely followed him closely. Jimmy uses his signal watch to call Mon-El. Jimmy is shot twice in the chest by codename Assassin, and sinks into the ocean. Despite surviving his assassination attempt, Jimmy decides to fake his death, having his documents planted on a heavily disfigured corpse. With no one knowing about his survival, Jimmy moves into the old Pemberton camera factory, sharing the results of his now unhindered investigations with Perry and Mon-El. DC Comics has reported in solicits that Nick Spencer and R.B. Silva will be producing a monthly 10-page backup feature in Action Comics chronicling the adventures of Jimmy Olsen in Metropolis. Reported story topics include an alien civilization choosing Metropolis as the base of a major cultural celebration, and the introduction of Chloe Sullivan, from the Smallville television series, to the DCU proper. In the latest arc, he goes on a charity date with a girl named Maggie, only to discover that she somehow has ties to Mr. McClure, and that she wants to marry him. The last 3 chapters of the story are told in the self-titled one-shot, Jimmy Olsen. Jimmy possesses a watch which emits a high-pitched signal only Superman can hear. In a 2010 story, he claimed it stopped working sometime in the past, never worked particularly well in the first place, and contacted Superman through Morse code now, anyway, but still wore it for show? Mostly during the Silver Age of comic books, Jimmy would find himself temporarily transformed, for better or worse, or undergo a disguise for various purposes. The variety of transformations Jimmy received during the Silver Age is often homaged or parodied in later comics and adaptations featuring the character. For instance, in JLA, The Nail, Jimmy cites 3 of these transformations as his motivations behind backing Luthor's bill to outlaw metahumans, and in Countdown, Jimmy is used as a spirit container for the deceased new gods, causing him to exhibit strange powers, albeit uncontrollably. With other stories it's simply making passing references.